Well, welcome out there once again to my program. I'm always happy to be here, and it's always a pleasure to have you out there in the audience. I know people watch, and well, I get some comments about what goes on the program, and most of them are favorable. I haven't heard anything bad, really. And especially with my panel show. The panel show is what you're going to watch on this program. The panel show is very interesting. I always learn something, and I know you will learn something out there. I have the regular, almost, in a sense, panelists. CJ, how are things going?
Oh, things are well, things are well. I just love the floor shows we keep getting here in the city, and you know, you can't get theater like this anywhere.
The city council meetings?
Well, you know, we had that lovely joint meeting this Monday, and nothing personal to my colleague to my left here, but that was a floor show, and it was well played, well played.
A nice haircut, what'd you do?
I chopped it all off, actually, so it's kind of there. I'm having a tough day right now.
Okay, you had a tough day the other day. Gabe, school committee man, how's things going on the school committee?
Well, can't complain so far, but I may be complaining as we get farther down the road.
Well, we're going to talk about that joint meeting, and we'll find out what happened there. Dan, ready to rock and roll. Boy, you got some, you're all fired up. I can tell.
I'm not that fired up, just ready to come out with some facts and straight talk.
All right. Well, let's start off with some facts and straight talk. We've got some information about the city budget, and an amazing figure, maybe disputable at this point, but what they're saying is that 16.7 million shortfall. In other words, 16.7 million that the city doesn't have yet needs to spend. Am I correct, CJ?
That's basically what they're asking for, and I think the funny part about it is that that's a number that's erroneous. Blatantly erroneous, actually, because something that's not considered into those shortfalls is our enterprise funds. For instance, our water department is $4 million short.
Okay, what is an enterprise fund?
The enterprise fund is a part of the city which is actually separate from the city budget. The water department has to generate its own revenues, which is supposed to support it. But they have to keep coming back to the city because it's also part of the city. And they keep coming back to the city saying we're short here, and this is why we need to raise water fees and sewer fees and whatnot.
They're not, you might say self-sufficient.
Exactly. They're $4 million short because of the CSO project. And again, using creative budgeting, we don't need to include that because we're going to send our team of crack lawyers who all graduated the Crayola School of Law, and they're going to fight in the courts to have it reduced.
Like the $800,000?
Like the $800,000 Dominion money that we're not going to get, and we're paying the attorney to fight for it, and then we just found out that when Dominion wins, or if Dominion wins, we have to pay their attorneys. So not only are we going to pay for our attorneys that we've hired out of Illinois, we're going to pay for the attorneys for Dominion to be there. Looks like a lose-lose to me.
Well, it mentioned in this article that was in the Herald News in regards to the school budget that, let's see here, it's, okay, while state aid of Chapter 70 reimbursement to the schools would increase by $2.6 million, and charter school reimbursement would increase by the same amount, $2.6 million, for a total of $5.2 million, those funds are eaten up by the charter school assessment of more than $4.9 million, leaving only an increase in funding to the school department of about $300,000, and that's what Kathy Ambiveris said. What do you make of that?
Frankly, I don't understand because they've amended the formula for reimbursement in a situation where there are new charter school seats available.
Let me just interrupt you for a moment. Charter school is a private school, isn't that correct?
No, it is. It's a different sort of animal. Some people would characterize it as a private school with public money. It is not part of the public school system, so it could be established by any group, but it is considered by the state a public school, It receives public money, state money to run. And at one time, when they first started that in Massachusetts, the funding for those students going to charter school would come right off the public school budget. Now what they do, and this is what makes it surprising that the assessments are so high. The first year, you're still funded. The public schools are still funded at 100%. Then in succeeding years, I believe it may be the next 5 years, it drops down to 25% per each student. So that shouldn't count that assessment shouldn't count any of the new seats that any of the that will be going to Argosy or to Atlantis.
Dan, you ran for school committee, was it last time around?
Absolutely.
And you had a lot of course, naturally, interest in the school department budget. Based on what I just read, is there something you'd like to say about this?
As my colleague, Mr. Andrade, said here, that the charter school formula is sort of cumbersome, but the bottom line is the Fall River School District, irrespective of the formula, the money ultimately comes out of the Chapter 70 funding. So at the end of
You say Chapter 70, you mean that's the money comes from the state?
That's the educational allotment for
To Fall River.
from the state to Fall River. So at the end of the day,
They don't fund the whole budget of the school department, do they?
most of it,
Most of it.
a large chunk is funded. I think between on the city side and the school department, the last figures I heard, it was upwards of 85% was funded by the state.
Of the school budget?
No, between the two.
Okay, between the two, you're saying the city?
Between the city and the school department, about 80 to 85% of that is funded by the state of Massachusetts.
It's 80%.
Yeah, that's what was
It's 80 cents on the
at the
dollar.
meeting.
Okay. A number of other things here that came out in regards to one of the paragraphs starts off with outlining what she called, I imagine that was, again, Mrs. Viveris, she called, quote, unquote, budget busters. School department, and, well, we have the police department. What's going on in the police department?
Well, the police department had its own shortfall this year. I mean, you're talking, what was it? What did they say originally, Danny? They were saying
1.5.
Yeah, 1.5, $1.6 million that they were short this year because of grants they lost. And again, we're planning on money we don't have. So we didn't even have that grant money yet, and we set our budget with it in there. This is creative budgeting, and it doesn't work. And, for Kathy Ann Viveris to say that one of the budget busters is the school department, yes, the school department is not a revenue-generating department. It is expenses. It's always expenses. It's an investment in the future of Fall River. It's an investment in the children. But the problem is that the children coming out of this school department are ill-equipped to handle the realities of life. And they're not even capable of getting jobs in most cases. And so the answer to Meg Mail Brown today is you have to keep throwing money at it. We can't get rid of administrators, because if we get rid of any administrators, we're not going to be able to keep the forward momentum going that we have. In other words, if my friends can't have a job, we're going to fail.
Does that bode well for a school department, Gabe? More and more money, but maybe the results are not what people would expect?
The problem is how do you use your money? And I have no doubt that some of what CJ says is true. It's hard to get a handle on it. For instance,
You mean the budget, people, when you read the budget, it's...
No, let's say for a school committee man, looking at the budget.
It's
For
not that
instance,
clear?
Some of it is, but there are certain things that you may want to look for that you can't find. For instance, I know that we pay some consultants in the school department.
Consultants?
Consultants in the school department, some for more or lesser amounts of money to do different things. Now, we don't have a clear handle on that. If you look through the budget, you're probably not going to find a line item for that. Obviously, it's got to be somewhere in some other category, but it's not clear.
So it's not a separate,
No. I remember looking, I haven't looked through all of this year's budget. We only got it about a week or two ago. But I remember this year's can't be much different than last year's. And I remember spending some time with that prior to when it was finally adopted, and never finding that.
Dan?
Well, for me, I'm going to go back to something I said in the campaign. I would start with all those positions that do not provide, in my mind, direct classroom student services, redesign coaches, all of these quasi-administrative positions, intervention specialists. These are high-salaried, almost administrative-like positions, and I know some of them are not. But my target would be look at every position and go after the ones first that do not provide direct student services in the classroom. That would be my first target. The second thing I would propose, zero-based budgeting or some form of it, where you make the superintendent justify every line item in the budget. Now, probably the votes are not there to do it, but, and I'll say it again, I believe the school district and the city need a complete, comprehensive, and performance audit of every account, every position, and every department citywide. If you want to know where the money is, that's how you go get it.
Okay, so CJ, here you are on a 6th floor. You're the new mayor of the city of Fall River.
Don't threaten me that way.
It's an
Don't punish you that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Your inauguration was the night before, and you're a little slumped over, you're a little tired, you're sitting in that big chair looking out over the bay. You got the bridge there, everything looks nice. Nice, clear, crisp day in January. And you got this on your table, and you know that the budget is 18, 19, whatever it is, $1 million in a hole. So what do you do as mayor? I mean, you got a big problem.
Well,
What do you do?
unlike previous administrations, Richard, the first thing I would do is I'd get on the phone to Ernst & Young, and I would say, I need you to come to Fall River, and I need you to do a thorough audit of every budget. I need you to do a forensic audit
Yeah.
of every single department.
Amen.
Every single department from beginning to end. And the reason no administration wants to do this is they're afraid of what they're going to find. They're afraid of what they're going to
What
find.
could they find?
Well, let's see. When they did a cursory audit a few years ago, they found a whole bunch of accounts that nobody knew where that money was supposed to be, where it came from, or who it belonged to.
Hey, there were accounts dormant for 25 years in the fire department.
Exactly. And nobody knew. They're afraid of what they're going to find, and they don't want that to happen. The city's afraid that some of their accounting practices are going to be found out, where we need to fill this hole, this budget hole over here. So what we're going to do is, where nobody can see, is we're going to reach over here into the city employees' health fund, and we're going to pull some money out of it and put it over here, and we'll put it back later. But we won't know about it.
Want to know what the real budget busters are, Richard?
Yes.
The real budget busters are pension funds that have been underfunded for years. What's our pension liability? What's our bonding liability right now? What's the remaining liability on the CSO project? You want to talk about budget busters, those are 3, and nobody's talking about it.
That's right.
Well, you're right, but I think Councilor Raymond Mitchell did bring it up at one of the council meetings.
When I say nobody's talking about it, I mean in the presentation outlined by City Administrator Viveris, I didn't hear any of those topics come out, particularly the pensions.
You also didn't hear any plans. You didn't hear any specifics. It was a floor show.
We are
It seems like it's up to what, $500 million?
Yes, it is.
we are years behind in our pension liability.
And that is only getting paid interest-wise,
If that.
if that. So in other words, it just keeps increasing.
Right.
Now, one day, someone might knock on the door and say, City of Fall River, you're insolvent.
And that's one of the things they're afraid of if they do an audit, is that they're going to find out that we are actually bankrupt.
Well, a number of years ago, state auditor made a presentation in front of the city council, State Auditor DiNucci,
Well,
and he was asked about the city bonds that are floated. And he was told that he told the councilors, I remember clearly that Councilor Kozak asked him to give a rating of Fall River city bonds, and he says, well, he says, councilors, they're actually junk bonds. Has anything changed since then?
the only reason our bond rating was increased is because the city piggybacked on the state's bond rating, used it as collateral, and got the bond rating of the city increased right before the election, and it was released just around that time.
So with
And
all